We're looking again at parables. And this is a very, very well-known parable. And it's interesting, isn't it? Most of us have heard the parables. It's interesting, I read in a journal recently that a survey was taken of what people remember of the New Testament. And this was done in the United States. And the most common thing that people could remember other than John 3:16 was stories, the parables. Not necessarily the miracle stories and stuff like that, but the actual parables that Jesus taught with. It's an interesting thing for us to remember that people seem to remember stories much more, as I mentioned last week. That passage that Gary read to us, I'm going to read it again. Why am I reading it again if Gary's already read it? Because if we read it a couple of times, we actually remember more of it. That's logical, isn't it? It says this: no one lights a lamp and hides it in a clay jar or puts it under a bed. Instead, they put it on a stand so that those who come in can see the light. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out in the open. Therefore, consider carefully how you listen. Whoever has been given more, whoever does not have, even what they think they have will be taken from them. Some interesting things in there, isn't it? Remember last week's passage was about the sower. And many times when we look through the flow of Scripture, we see that the parables as well as the narrative are all linked together in thought process. And we see that here. Interestingly, it is as if Jesus has a point in each that we need to take note of, yet we need to take all of the story or all of the parables together to get a complete picture. Remember last week, the parable was about reproducing our faith. And we're thinking at the moment, because of this whole virus thing, how do we do that? It's nearly impossible to physically share with people. But reproducing is what we're told to do. How are we going to do it? How are we going to do that? One of the things that came out during the week, that there are some people who are self-isolating by going camping. There's a great picture of a friend of mine's friend of mine. I actually know the guy, he's from Armadale. He's self-isolating up in Armadale, and there's this fabulous photo of him down the bottom of Ebor Falls where he'd been trout fishing, and there's this fish that's about this long. He said, "What's wrong with self-isolating? It's great fun." The thing is, there's very little communication outside of your self-isolation, doesn't it? But this story here that we see from this parable is actually, in some ways, a camping story. I know from my camping, and for years and years I spent so much time camping I got very sick of it, because I was a youth worker. You went out and you did stuff with kids, and camping was an amazing way to get to know the kids and stuff like that and really bond with them. But I also learned a whole heap of things about camping, like having your light in a position in your tent where you can actually see to do something is really, really important. And putting your torch underneath your sleeping bag means that it's not going to work. It's not going to do the job that it's called to do, turn the light on and see where you're going. And for me being clumsy and stuff like that, I would often lose my torch. So when I needed to get up and go to the toilet in the middle of the night, I was tripping over everything. It's a practical story. It's a totally practical story. You get a torch, in their case it was a candle or a small oil burning light, whatever it was, and you put it up high so its light is useful. It's one that we totally understand. We get it. Where do we place electric lights? Look. Oh, that was funny watching everybody go. We all look up because that's normally where we put lights, isn't it? Why? Because the light comes down. Same principle. We put an electric light where it is useful, where it will cast its light to the maximum use. That's what we do. And that's how it translate into life now. But how does it translate for us as Christians? How do we shine our light? How do we put ourselves in a position to be recognised as Christians? Shining is one thing that it's called. Women have whole conferences called Shine Conference and stuff like that. And it's putting it out there, isn't it? Shining for Jesus is putting the concept of Christianity out there for people. Showing that Jesus, and this is the way that I want to put it, showing that Jesus works in our life. Have you ever thought that witnessing is actually showing that the Jesus relationship actually functions in life? It's not about quoting John 3:16 55 times until the person gets it. It's about letting people know that Jesus works in my life. That the Jesus relationship is not only a nice thing to have because it gets us to heaven, but it is valid and that it works and the relationship with Jesus is functional. And in some ways, witnessing and evangelism, stuff like that, over the years in Christian culture has become too difficult to do because there's all these formats for it. But the template we have in this story is just shine. Just shine. Just let people know how Jesus works in your life. Just let people know that Jesus does work in your life. Our church communities quite often will have outreach programs, witnessing programs, mission programs, etc., etc., etc. But they all learn individuals to shine. We can't do any of those programs without individuals who actually are lights for Jesus. Witnessing is just as the word says. It's a witness. And a bit of a look at dictionary stuff. A witness is an attestation of a fact or event. Testimony. In other words, what a witness does is tells the story of what happened. When I lived in Griffith, I was unfortunate enough to actually see a kid get hit on a pedestrian crossing. And the police asked me questions. And it was interesting because we discovered that someone from another corner watched the same accident, someone from another corner, so there's pedestrian crossing and there's another pedestrian crossing over there, so there's people around. And the police asked people from different places what they saw. We all saw it differently. We all witnessed the same event. We all, and one of the cops says, you all put your own personality in it, just give me the facts. Isn't that an interesting way of looking at witnessing for Jesus? We all stand on different corners, we all have different points in life, and what we've just got to do is shine Jesus. Show Jesus. Witness to Jesus. One of the other ways of looking at witness is one that gives evidence, specifically one who testifies in a clause or before a judicial tribunal. This is where it becomes official. When you go to court or you make a statement that is official, do you actually see your witness as an official statement? An official statement of Jesus' truth. In some ways, having that mentality would change the seriousness of how we put things. It's very easy to try and dumb down the gospel when you're talking to, say, little kids and stuff like that. But we've just got to be really careful we get it right. There's a seriousness to it. The third one is one asked to be present at a transaction so as to be able to testify to its having taken place. So it's someone who's standing there and watching you sign. Sometimes I have to sign legal documents for people. I have to watch their signature. And a couple of times people said, oh, I've already signed it. Just sign it. No, that's not how it works. And actually, it would be illegal for me to do that. I actually have to watch the signature. And it's someone who watches what people are doing. Another thing about witnessing is we watch what they're doing, so we witness to it. We've seen what Jesus does for us. It's like he's signed the thing in blood, hasn't he? And we testify to it. We say, yeah, we shine about that. The last one here is one who has a personal knowledge of something. Yep. And that is definitely us. If we call ourselves Christians, we have knowledge of Jesus that other people don't have. Non-Christians don't get our relationship to Jesus, logically. A lot of the times when I'm having people talk about getting married and stuff like that, one has personal knowledge. Yes, we have knowledge of Jesus like nobody else has. And when I take people through marriage preparation and stuff, they've got no idea what it's like to be married. And you can't tell them. They don't know. They think it's all going to be all bed of roses, it's all going to be fabulous. And the reality is there's going to be some interesting times. Is that a tactful way to put it? Yeah. But someone who's been married can testify to the amazingness of the relationship as well as the tough times that are ahead. See, witness is really showing what Jesus does in your life. It's not a program, it's a lifestyle. Gary's just walked all the way around the camera so he doesn't walk across. He's such a caring person. Thank you, Gary. But notice too what Jesus says in verse 17. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. The thing is, we can't hide things. Now, I'm going to take this from a slightly different perspective. I recently met up with a guy and he was doing some work and I chatted to him, knew nothing about him, but I thought, hey, this dude's got to be a Christian. There's just something about him. And I couldn't place any reason why I thought that. Okay? I mean, he looked normal for today. He had tattoos, and he was just in work uniform and stuff like that. And I'm going, why do I think this guy's a Christian? And I said, by the way, I'm just asking a question. And he said, well, you can ask the question because you're a minister and you're wondering whether I'm a Christian. And I go, yeah, how'd you know that? He said, I don't know, I just sort of thought you were going to ask that question. He said, yes, I'm a Christian. I go to such and such a church in the Blue Mountains. Cool. How did I know? I have no idea. You can't hide your witness, and we shouldn't be trying, but we can't stop shining if we are on fire with God. If our relationship to Jesus is tight, we can't help it. We can't help it. So how does this shining concept fit into life? Witnessing, shining for Jesus, putting ourselves in positions that we can be useful. How does that work in our life? Putting ourselves in a position where God can use us to be useful light to people. Yep, you are a witness. And I think the whole thing with it is, we need to understand that we have an impact wherever we are. Everywhere we are. Because of our relationship to Jesus. And you go, yeah, no, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes I lose it and I get angry. I didn't say you'd always be a good witness. And I think we've got to be realistic about that too. We're going to think about that. What is my witness in this point? Am I shining? Am I trying to shove a cover over it? one of the things that I used to do when I lived in Griffith, I taught music, and I taught in the cathedral office at the back. What was happening was the candles were being stolen and they didn't know why. So they asked they thought if they had someone on site, that people would be less likely to steal the candles, and it worked, okay? But what I did for them was I would close the doors when I'd finished, because the doors were always open in the cathedral. I would close the doors and I'd put out all of the candles. And the first couple of times I just walked around and did it with my fingers. But after a while, after about the 10th one, that burns the fingers. So I asked the dean and he said, oh no, there's a little gadget for that. And it's a little thing, it's like a little bell, and you walk around with it and you go, boink, boink, and it puts them out. And I've always thought that it's really sad to put out a candle in a church, because it totally goes against what this particular parable is about. But it's always been very pointed to me that the candle doesn't work if you put it out. How does our candle get put out? I believe Satan's really trying to put our candle out. He's trying to put the candle out of every church in Australia at the moment. Probably most churches around the world. Because he's trying to not let us be a physical witness of gathering together. See what's happening? We're not just in this whole concept of self-isolation because it's a lot of fun. We're not just in this because, it's a lot of bad luck. Satan is using this to try and stop us shining for Jesus. Isn't he? There's more to this than meets the eye. There's a spiritual battle going on. And it's as if Satan's going around with this little candle putter outer. As I said, there is a name for it and I can't remember what it is. A stuffer. Snuffer, okay. I kind of like stuff about it anyway. But so he's wandering around with his snuffer and trying to put the candles out. And it's not going to work. And you know why it's not going to work? Because we have a relationship with the power source. We have a relationship with Jesus. We cannot be put out. It may feel like we're being snuffed out. Is that the way? We may feel that way, but it's not going to work. Because the relationship to Jesus will gather momentum in our life. It says in the last part of that, verse 18, therefore consider carefully how you listen. What kind of statement is that? Consider how you listen. Now, I got to be totally honest, this whole isolation thing is really tricky for me. Because I don't hear it well. And I need to get closer to people to hear better. It's difficult, and some of you older folk with hearing aids will understand that. It's difficult. It's difficult. You need to put yourself in a position where you can see. One of the things that I try not to do is talk straight to people with their backs to the light, because you can't see their face, because they're just a silhouette. So you try, and you might have seen me do this, you move around so you're seeing, looking at them side on, so you can actually see their mouth moving. There's all sorts of things like that. We've got to consider how we listen. But it's not just consider the physical listening, it's actually listening and taking in what God wants us to hear. It's listening to people as they are lonely and isolated and going, okay, I'm listening to this, I'm hearing this. What am I going to do with it? What am I going to do? How am I going to shine into that person's life right at the moment? It goes on and says, whoever has been given more, whoever does not have, even what they think they have will be taken from them. Huh? So it doesn't matter whether you've got a lot or a little, it's going to be taken from you. Yeah. If you're not listening, if you're not taking notice of what other people are saying, you're going to lose a relationship. Let's be honest about that. People who don't listen lose their relationships. And that's just one application of that.
But what he's also saying is, remember he said last week in the thing, whoever has ears, let him listen. Whoever has ears, let him hear. He's saying here, consider carefully how you listen. He's also saying, if you can get this, you've got to do something with it. If you can understand this, you can do something with it. If you don't get it, a lot of non-Christians won't get it. It's just a story. It's just a parable. But here it's an application for life. If you know something, you are responsible to do something with it. It's a big call, isn't it? And it's a hard thing for us at the moment, right at this moment, when we're not exactly sure how we're supposed to listen or what we're supposed to listen to. We do need to make ourselves open, totally open, to communicate when people ask questions. We need to make ourselves available to care for people. We can hear. We will be able to use the phone. We may not be able to read their lips. By the way, don't use Skype or anything if you want to talk to me, because it's always a little bit stilted and it comes back and I read totally different things out of your mouth than what the words actually say. So it's quite fun. And we can't be like that. We've actually got to understand what the words are saying, not what we think they're saying. We've got to understand what the person's needs really are, rather than just listening to something. We've got to stop listening. I think I've said this before. We've got to stop listening to respond. We've got to start listening to learn, to know how to respond. Really, really important for us to do that. I hope and pray that over this week you will have opportunity to shine for Jesus. That you will have opportunity to be that light in whatever circumstance that is. And that we take that on arms wide open, but of course at 1.5 metres. I ask you to find ways of communicating Jesus' love to the people that you have contact with in any form. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you and praise you for the way you care for us. We thank you and praise you for the way that you use us. And it blows our minds to think that you can do it other ways, and you choose to use us to be your vessels and to be your tools. Lord, help us to maintain our tools so that we are useful to you, even in this difficult situation.